Any discovery of a Roman dodecahedron is remarkable and unusual, because there's not many more than 100 known to exist.
For 200 years, scientists called it unsolvable, a bronze object that Rome never documented, never explained, never acknowledged existed. Then in January 2025, an AI pattern recognition system did something no human researcher had ever accomplished. It mapped every known Roman dodecahedron against 47,000 archaeological artifacts from 12 civilizations spanning 4 continents.
Generally, a dodecahedron is a 12-sided item, and the Roman dodecahedron was about the size of a baseball.
The algorithm was designed to find Roman matches, Celtic matches, Greek, Egyptian, Mesopotamian, anything human. Instead, it flagged something that made Dr. Elena Richter's blood run cold. The geometric precision of these objects didn't match Rome, didn't match the Celts, didn't match any civilization in our entire archaeological record. The construction template predates every known metalworking culture by at least 3 centuries. Someone was here before us. Someone with mathematical knowledge we're only beginning to understand. And when researchers finally cracked open a sealed specimen and analyzed what was hidden inside, they discovered these objects weren't just built by something unknown. They were built to communicate with something we can't explain. The Norton Disney excavation, summer 2023. Norton Disney, a quiet English village 15 miles from Lincoln. Dr. Richard Holt, a 20-year veteran of Romano-British excavations, was supervising volunteers in a carefully gridded dig when a trowel scraped against something metallic beneath the topsoil. The sound cut through the afternoon air like a blade. Everyone in the field froze mid-motion. Holt dropped to his knees in the dirt. His hands were shaking as he brushed away centuries of compacted earth. "When I saw what was emerging," he later told colleagues at a conference presentation, "my chest tightened. I couldn't breathe properly. I'd only ever seen dodecahedra in photographs in academic journals, never in person. But here's the catch. Unlike specimens yanked randomly from fields by weekend metal detectorists with no scientific context, this one came from what archaeologists call a sealed context, undisturbed soil layers, photograph by photograph documentation, millimeter by millimeter precision. The dodecahedron wasn't dropped by accident and forgotten. It was deliberately buried alongside 3rd century Roman coins, pottery fragments, and iron tools. Post-hole outlines in the surrounding earth revealed the foundation of a villa or workshop. Stone debris scattered in patterns suggested someone destroyed the building above it, intentionally, violently. Think about that for a second. Someone hid this object carefully underground, then burned down the entire structure to make sure no one would ever think to look there. But get this. The object's condition defied everything Holt expected from something buried for nearly 2 millennia. Mirror-like bronze patina reflecting afternoon sunlight without a trace of the green corrosion that should have consumed it. No cracks in the casting, soldered knobs perfectly, intact, as if the object had been made months ago rather than centuries. When Holt lifted it toward the sun with trembling fingers, the geometry cast pentagonal shadows that layered atop each other in complex patterns. Patterns that seemed almost deliberate, almost designed to create specific shapes at specific angles. It reacted to the light in a way that felt intentional, one team member wrote in the excavation journal that evening, like it was meant to do exactly that. That observation would soon prove more accurate than anyone could have imagined, and far more disturbing. If you're ready to see what mainstream archaeology has been hiding for 2 centuries, hit subscribe right now. Because what they found sealed inside this object changes everything we thought we knew about human history, and who was here before us. The object Rome tried to erase. So here's the deal. When we think of ancient Rome, we imagine obsessive documentation, military manuals covering every tactical formation, tax records tracking every citizen, recipes for garum fish sauce, even bathroom graffiti preserved in Pompeii's ruins. The Romans cataloged their entire world with precision that modern historians still rely on. And yet, they never once mentioned this object, not a single reference in any surviving document. The Roman dodecahedron is a hollow bronze object with 12 perfectly formed pentagonal faces. each face pierced by a circular hole, and no two holes are exactly the same size. Some as small as 6 millimeters, others exceeding 40. At every corner sits a rounded knob, cast and soldered with remarkable precision. Over 130 confirmed specimens exist, scattered across the former Roman Empire. Now, here's where things get really strange. Rome was the ancient world's master of mass production. They minted millions of coins, manufactured thousands of standardized tools, yet barely 130 dodecahedra across their entire territory spanning most of Europe. And that's putting it lightly. Every single specimen was found in the outer provinces: Britain, Gaul, Germania, the furthest fringes of imperial control. Not one from Rome itself, not one from Italy, not one from the Mediterranean heartland where Roman civilization began and flourished. Think about that for a second. An empire that documented bathroom graffiti in meticulous detail left zero records of these precisely crafted bronze objects. No carvings depicting them on any monument, no frescoes showing them in any villa, no mosaics incorporating them in any bathhouse floor. No mentions in any surviving text from any Roman author across 5 centuries of literature. Someone didn't simply forget them. Someone erased them from the historical record. Deliberately. Systematically. Completely. For 200 years, researchers threw theory after theory at this mystery, hoping something would stick. Candlestick holders, except no specimen anywhere, shows wax residue or scorch marks despite detailed examination. Military rangefinders for calculating artillery distance, except the holes vary wildly with no calibration markings, and not a single dodecahedron was found near military equipment or legionary camps. Knitting gauges for crafting gloves, except no wool fibers, have ever been detected inside any specimen under microscopic analysis. Every mainstream explanation collapsed under scrutiny because researchers kept assuming these were Roman objects serving Roman purposes. And that's putting it lightly. The AI analysis would prove that assumption was the fundamental error all along, an error that blinded us to the truth for 2 centuries. The 2025 revelation. Early 2025, Dr. Elena Richter's team at Oxford's Archaeological Materials Laboratory released findings that sent shockwaves through the discipline before the paper even cleared peer review. Leaked copies spread across academic forums within hours. The controversy was immediate and intense. Metallurgical testing on the Norton Disney. Specimen revealed a bronze alloy composition matching pre-Roman Celtic metallurgy from the British Isles. Trace element analysis dated the object to at least 150 years before Roman occupation of Britain began. Older than Julius Caesar's expeditions. Older than any documented Roman contact with the region. But here's the catch. That Celtic dating wasn't the discovery that made Richter call her department head at 11 p.m. Her team fed the geometric specifications into an advanced AI pattern matching algorithm designed to identify cultural origins through mathematical analysis. The system compared the dodecahedron's properties against 47,000 cataloged artifacts, spanning 12 major civilizations across 4 continents. Proportional relationships between hole sizes, precise angles of the pentagonal faces, specific placement ratios of the corner knobs, mathematical relationships encoded in the overall design. The AI found matches, not Roman artifacts, not Celtic artifacts, not Greek, Egyptian, Mesopotamian, Persian, or any other known ancient civilization. The geometric template matched artifacts from anomalous archaeological sites that predate known metalworking cultures by centuries. Objects currently sitting in museum storage rooms around the world, labeled with question marks because they don't fit any civilization in our established historical framework. Richter ran the analysis 3 separate times with different parameters. The results didn't change. The mathematical signature was consistent and undeniable. "The math doesn't lie," she reportedly told colleagues during the internal review session, her voice barely steady. Either we're missing an entire civilization from our understanding of human history, or these objects weren't made by humans at all. Let that sink in. Human remains sealed. Inside. Dr. Marcus Webb, Oxford's lead radiochemical analyst, handled the next phase of investigation. A 30-year veteran who had examined everything from Egyptian, canopic jars to Viking burial goods to Mesopotamian cylinder seals. He thought he had witnessed every surprise ancient artifacts could offer. When the spectrometry results from the Norton Disney specimen appeared on his screen, he asked his assistant to leave the room, closed the door firmly, sat alone in the darkened lab with what he was seeing. Deep within the hollow chamber of the dodecahedron, his team found microscopic traces of calcium phosphate fused with amber resin and rendered animal fat. Chemical combinations strongly associated with funerary practices and necromantic rites documented in Iron Age Europe. But get this, that wasn't what made Webb's face drain of color. The residue contained a distinct isotope signature that Webb recognized immediately from 3 decades of experience. Cremated human bone, not contamination from surrounding burial soil, sealed inside the object deliberately during its original use. I've seen human remains incorporated into artifacts before, Webb told colleagues afterward, his voice reportedly unsteady throughout the conversation. Funerary urns, ossuaries, medieval reliquaries, but never sealed inside something this precisely constructed with this level of intentional design. This wasn't accidental contamination over centuries. This was the purpose of the object. The AI cross-referenced the chemical composition against thousands of known ritual substances from global ethnographic and archaeological databases. No Roman match anywhere, no Celtic match, no known Iron Age tradition from any European culture. Now, here's where things get really strange. The closest chemical parallels came from ritual traditions that existed before Rome and before the Celts emerged as a distinct culture. Traditions we have almost no written records of. Traditions that left behind only fragments, mysteries, and objects that don't fit our timeline. Some researchers privately floated a theory that still generates intense controversy in academic circles. What if the dodecahedron wasn't just made to honor the dead? What if it was built to communicate with them? The varying hole sizes creating different shadow patterns at different times. The astronomical alignments during equinox and solstice. The burnt offerings of specific substances sealed inside. It matches almost exactly the fragmentary descriptions of necromantic instruments from pre-Celtic oral traditions, preserved by later medieval scribes. Think about that for a second. The dead weren't just remembered through these objects. They were consulted, spoken to, and perhaps something answered back. The forbidden locations. Once scientists examined distribution patterns through AI-powered geographic mapping, a disturbing picture emerged from the data, one that had been hiding in plain sight for decades, visible but invisible to researchers who weren't looking for it. Dodecahedra appear almost exclusively along Rome's western frontier. Britain, Gaul, Germania, portions of the Danube region, territories that were culturally Roman on the surface, Latin inscriptions, Roman architecture, imperial administration, but spiritually something else entirely beneath that veneer. So here's the deal. This distribution mirrors exactly where Rome struggled most, to erase pre-Roman spiritual traditions, where Druids continued practicing in secret despite imperial bans, where old gods received offerings behind closed doors for centuries after conquest. But here's the catch. The AI revealed patterns human researchers missed for 200 years of study. These objects keep turning up in specific types of locations. Burial sites where the dead were interred with grave goods. River crossings where travelers made offerings before dangerous passages. Settlement boundaries where tribal territories met. In ancient belief systems documented across Europe, these were liminal places, thresholds between worlds. Rivers marked borders between the living and the dead in Celtic cosmology. Boundaries separated the known world from the unknown realms beyond. These aren't random spots where Romans casually dropped tools while traveling. These are sacred places where rituals happened, where the veil between worlds was believed to be thin, where communication with something beyond was possible, and that's putting it lightly. Several specimens show no signs of regular handling over their existence. Edges aren't worn down from repeated touch. Holes aren't smoothed by fingers passing through them daily. They weren't everyday objects used constantly. They were brought out briefly, used for specific ritual moments, then carefully hidden again, protected from unauthorized eyes. Roman law specifically criminalized unauthorized divination and unsanctioned religious practice. the Lex Cornelia de Sicarius et Beneficis imposed death sentences for practicing magic outside approved channels. Objects associated with forbidden practices wouldn't be cataloged in official imperial records. They would be confiscated and destroyed whenever discovered. The AI found evidence of systematic erasure across the historical record that human researchers had missed. References to mysterious bronze objects in early Roman provincial administrative reports, later redacted in all surviving copies. Temple inventory lists with items scratched out and made illegible. A coordinated imperial effort, spanning centuries to make these objects disappear from history entirely. Rome didn't ignore the dodecahedra out of disinterest. Rome feared them, feared what they represented, feared what they might be able to do. But get this. A forgotten manuscript buried in a Swiss monastery was about to explain exactly why and reveal who really made them. The Forbidden Manuscript, late 2024. Dr. Isabel Morrow, a paleographer specializing in medieval Latin manuscripts, was examining forgotten documents in a Swiss monastic archive when one particular codex stopped her cold in the reading room, cataloged as CEX 134 under the obscure title Mysterium Dolore. This 12th century manuscript appeared to be a copy of something considerably older. Linguistic analysis suggested late Roman origins, possibly 4th or 5th century composition. The manuscript contained a phrase that medieval scribes had marked as untranslatable in marginal annotations. Orbis divinorum, the divine sphere, or possibly the sphere for speaking with the divine. The passage described 12 faces, pierced and crowned, handled by the whispering ones of the forest, used to hear the voices of the stone sleepers beneath the earth. When high-resolution UV imaging revealed faded text in the margins that had been partially scraped away, Morrow set down her notes with trembling hands. Medieval monks had deliberately erased the full paragraph centuries ago. They found its contents too disturbing to preserve intact. Now, here's where things get really strange. The restored text described a bronze object with 12 perforated sides and rounded protrusions at each vertex where the faces met. A perfect match for the dodecahedron in every measurable detail. The manuscript warned that such spheres were not to be shown under the imperial eye, and should be buried when the stars turn thrice upon the wolf's shadow. Astronomers consulting on the project matched that celestial phrase to a triple lunar eclipse cycle used in Druidic calendars according to classical sources. The instruction mirrors exactly how real dodecahedra have been found in the archaeological record, intact, carefully buried underground, near locations associated with astronomical observations and celestial alignments. So, here's the deal. This document preserved fragments of oral traditions that the Roman Empire spent centuries trying to systematically erase. The stone sleepers almost certainly referred to the dead resting beneath burial mounds. The dodecahedron was a communication device, a sacred vessel designed to bridge the living and the deceased. But the phrase whispering ones of the forest referenced something else entirely. Something the manuscript described as not of the tribes of men, and older than the standing stones themselves. Let that sink in. Older than Stonehenge, older than any Celtic culture, older than any human civilization in Britain. Something that was already ancient when the first humans arrived on those islands after the Ice Age. Light, shadow, and sacrifice. Scientists at Ghent University in Oxford conducted controlled experiments using precision, 3D printed replicas accurate to within 1/10 of a millimeter of the original specimens. In direct sunlight, the dodecahedra didn't cast random shadows as simple geometric objects would. The varying holes projected circular beams that moved in symmetrical patterns across flat surfaces, tracking the sun's movement. One researcher called it a solar dial without numbers, measuring something we haven't identified. But here's the catch. During equinox, testing at the precise moment of astronomical alignment, models cast near-perfect pentagonal outlines that rotated slowly throughout the day, marking the passage of hours with geometric precision. The object doesn't just look mathematical. It functions as a mathematical instrument, tracking celestial movement with accuracy that shouldn't exist in any known prehistoric culture. Oxford's radiochemical lab analyzed 5 authentic specimens from museum collections across Europe. 3 contained burnt organic matter sealed inside their hollow chambers, carbon particles from incomplete combustion, oxidized copper salts from exposure to extreme heat, degraded animal blood proteins that had survived for millennia. Botanical residues included lavender, thyme, and pine resin, specific plants associated with funeral rituals across multiple cultures separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. And that's putting it lightly. The chemical structure partially matched ancient Egyptian embalming mixtures from the Third Intermediate Period. Specific techniques and ingredient combinations that shouldn't have existed anywhere in pre-Roman Britain, according to our understanding of ancient trade and knowledge transfer. Think about that for a second. The same geometric proportions appearing on different continents, the same ritual substances used by cultures separated by oceans, the same astronomical alignments encoded into objects found thousands of miles apart. The AI found the connection that human researchers missed because we weren't looking for it. Either these ancient civilizations had extensive contact we don't know about, trading knowledge and techniques across oceans and continents, or they all received these objects from the same source, a source that predates them all, a source that was here before human civilization emerged. We are not alone. So, what does not alone actually mean? The title makes a promise. Here's what the evidence delivers. The evidence points to something specific, not aliens descending in spacecraft in the Hollywood sense. Something more subtle and far more disturbing when you truly consider the implications. A presence that existed before recorded human civilization began. An intelligence that understood advanced mathematics, precision astronomy, and sophisticated metallurgy at levels we're only beginning to recognize. Something that left artifacts behind across the ancient world. Objects that humans later adopted into their rituals without ever understanding who created them or why they were made. The Dodecahedron wasn't built by Romans despite being found in Roman territory, wasn't built by Celts despite dating to their era. The AI proves beyond mathematical doubt that the construction template predates every known metalworking culture in Europe by centuries. But get this, the objects weren't just scattered and forgotten. They were deliberately hidden at specific locations, sealed with cremated human remains, buried at liminal threshold sites between worlds, used in rituals designed to communicate with the dead, or with whatever the whispering ones of the forest actually were. We are not alone in our history. Something else was here first, something that understood things about geometry, astronomy, and the boundaries between life and death that we're only beginning to glimpse. Something that Rome encountered in the western provinces and feared so deeply they spent centuries trying to erase every trace of its existence. Now, here's where things get really strange. Despite over 130 discoveries spanning 2 full centuries of archaeology, the Dodecahedron has never received major funded research from any university or institution. The British Museum didn't display a single specimen until 2014, despite having multiple examples in storage for decades. A leaked 2022 conference transcript revealed senior archaeologists calling the Dodecahedron a career killer, too fringe for serious funding applications, too weird for mainstream publication, too dangerous for anyone seeking tenure to touch. This object wasn't ignored because it was unimportant. It was ignored because it threatens everything we believe about human origins and who was here before us. And now, AI has torn that silence apart forever. What else did they bury? So here's the question that should haunt you tonight. If Rome systematically erased this object from every record, every relief, every document, what else did they bury? How many artifacts sitting in museum storage rooms right now are waiting for AI analysis to reveal what they really are and who really made them? What happens when we dig it all up? Let me know in the comments. Do you think the Dodecahedron was a communication device for the dead? A gift from a pre-human intelligence that was here before us? Or something we haven't even guessed yet? Smash that like button if you think Rome buried the truth about our origins. And subscribe so you don't miss what we uncover next.